Welcome to CCN Midday News. I am your host, Captivating Christian, and here are some of your top stories for today, the 2nd of June. Trump slams governors as weak, urging crackdown on protesters. Illinois' governor confronts Trump in a stunning conference call. And Minnesota governor blames the right-wing white supremacists for violence. Now the truth comes out. And a 22-year-old black man was fatally shot at a protest against police brutality outside an Omaha bar. And former President Barack Obama puts out guidelines to get to work amidst the George Floyd protests. Republican groups rip Trump supporters using the Confederate Treason flag. Let's get to the news. In true President Donald Trump fashion on Monday, calling many of the governors weak and demanding tougher crackdowns on the burning and stealing among some demonstrators in the aftermath of another night of violent protests in a dozen of many of the American cities. Trump spoke to governors on a video teleconference that also included law enforcement, national security officials, and telling the state leaders that they have to get tougher. Most of you are weak, Trump said. You have to arrest people. The days of the protests, which were triggered by the death of George Floyd, a black man who had died when a white Minneapolis police officer kneeled on his neck for several minutes. The demonstrations turned violent in several cities with looting and mayhem, and fires ignited in historic Park Lafayette, which is across from the White House. The president urged the governors to deploy the National Guard, which he took credit for helping calm the situation Sunday night in Minneapolis. He demanded that similar tough measures be taken in cities that have experienced a spasm of violence, including New York, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles. We've got to arrest people. We have to track people. We have to put them in jail for 10 years, and you'll never see this stuff again, Trump said. We're doing it in Washington, D.C. We're going to do something that people haven't seen before. The president told the governors that they were making themselves look like fools for not calling up for more National Guard as a show of force on the city streets. Attorney General William Barr, who also was on the call, told the governors that a joint terrorist task force will be used to track agitators and urged local officials to dominate the streets and control.
Remarkable audio that CNN has obtained.
What happened in the state of Minnesota, they were a laughing stock all over the world. They took over the police department. The police were running down the street, sirens blazing, the rest of them running. It was on camera. And then they wiped out. You probably have to build a new one, but I've never seen anything like it. And the whole world was laughing. 3 days later, I spoke to the governor. The governor is, I think, on the call, and he's the next one died. And all of a sudden, and I said, you got to use the National Guard in big numbers. They did it first, and they did. And I'll tell you that, I don't know what it was. It was the third night, fourth night. Those guys walked through that stuff like it was butter. They walked right through, and you haven't had any problems since. I mean, they know they're not going to go there now. They'll go to some other place. But once you called out and you dominated, you took the worst place, and you made it. They didn't even cover it last night because there was so little action. Because you dominated. Now, what happened to New York, I have to tell you, I live in Manhattan. What's going on in Manhattan, I have no idea. New York's finest, they got to be allowed maybe to do their job. I don't know what's happening in Manhattan, but it's terrible. And because it's New York, because it's Manhattan, it gets a lot of press. So they really spend a lot of time on it. But New York has got to have to toughen up. And we'll send you National Guard if you want. You have the largest police force in the country, 40,000 people, I understand. But what's going on in New York is terrible. It's terrible. Of all the places. What went on last night in Los Angeles with the stores and the storefronts left to dominate. Yeah, go ahead, Phil. Something French.
Now, here's my thoughts on this. Of course, you would call someone weak when you're weak yourself is deflection. You say things of that nature to make yourself look good, because nothing can be as weak as a leader unable to lead peacefully or send a piece of calm to a nation, a hurt nation of people. It says a lot about the character of the person in office. It's always this sense of dominance and control and keeping, no pun intended, but keeping your foot on someone's neck. That is the problem that we're facing with right now, is the reason for all this unrest is because of the, oh, you have to control them type of rhetoric that's being passed on. So yeah, definitely not a leader by any means. I guess just his tone and talk, maybe it turns people on as leadership, but it's far from it. But that's just my thoughts. In a heated exchange that took place on the conference call on Monday between President Donald Trump and Governor J.B. Pritzker, the Democratic governor out of Illinois, during which the president's response to the protests following George Floyd's fatal arrest was described as inflammatory. In a transcript shared by the New York Times, the governor said that he was extraordinarily concerned by the rhetoric Trump has used amidst the nationwide protests, claiming he failed to calm down the reaction. The exchange occurred on a call between Trump and the governors, which he called for the leaders to dominate the protesters with force. It's been inflammatory, and it's not okay for that officer to choke George Floyd to death, Pritzker told the president. But we have to call for calm. We have to have police reform called for. The governor then said that the White House was making the protest worse by failing to acknowledge the pain Americans have been feeling following Floyd's death, and asked the president to bring order by promoting peace. Trump told the governor that he did not approve of his coronavirus response, adding that he didn't like his rhetoric either. Okay, quick thoughts on this. How more childish could a human be, a grown person be, and not take the constructive lack on your part and admit to do better? No, you want to point the finger at the person pointing the finger at you. I don't know how people can't see that we do not need another 4 years of this garbage, but please, people, we don't need another 4 years of this. The same people that are showing up at these protests and these mobs or riots or whatever is going on in particular cities, I want those same people to show up on voting day and vote. Leave your work, leave your job, leave whatever, and vote. Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz, a Democrat, pinned responsibility for the violence in Minneapolis on the right-wing white supremacist and drug cartel on Saturday. Walz, along with Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, who's also a Democrat, and St. Paul's Mayor Melvin Carter, also blamed the violence on the outer-state professional agitators and not local residents. People in multiple U.S. cities are protesting police brutality, and systematic racism after a video which showed a former Minneapolis police officer with his knee on the neck of Floyd for nearly 10 minutes. On Friday, Vice reported that a group of white supremacists identified as Boogaloo Boys were showing up to protest around the nation with the sole agenda of carrying out their hostility towards law enforcement. Boogaloo, which is a code word used within far-right organizations to spark civil unrest. The group, which is often showed up to demonstrations in Hawaiian shirts and with weapons, the antipathy of the Boogaloo Boys towards law enforcement stems from a 1992 Ruby Ridge shooting where a former Green Beret family was gunned down by the FBI, ATF, and Secret Service. Other groups are promoting themselves as intermediates between law enforcement and protesters. Additionally, another far-right group identified as Accelerist have been reported as having a presence at the protest. The group encourages its followers to attend the protest with the purpose of attacking black people, exacerbating the ethnic tensions, and starting a race war, Vice has reported. The escalationists encourage violence in efforts to speed up the collapse of society and use opportunities to protest to carry out their motives. Okay, so here are my clear thoughts on these outside agitators. It's definitely nothing that is far-fetched. It's very true. If you just think about the advantages that having a hate group in a group of protesters that happen to be people of color, you can incite a riot. You can, have people come in and escalate things from a protest to a riot to burning down, blowing up, because these are things that a lot of people of color don't even have. Because let's be very honest, if they had that kind of firepower, things would have been blown up a long time ago. A lot of more things would have burned down years ago. So there are some outside agitators involved in this. I think that to be very true. Now what we can do is kind of vet people a little bit more, fill out things a little bit more, and get more engaged, with a lot of people to search out those bad elements and push forward. But we don't need to add to it either. Just because they bust the window open to the department store, we don't have to go in there and loot and take from it. Let them do that. And I think that's the disservice that we partially play a role in. Let them take it. Let them steal it. Let them show themselves, and they won't show themselves stealing from stores, walking out with lamps and all that. They won't display that because that's not the image that they want you to know of them. But we need to start taking that same attitude. Prosecutors in Omaha, Nebraska said on Monday that the white bar owner who fatally shot a 22-year-old on Saturday night will not face charges because video evidence shows he acted in self-defense. James Sherlock died after being shot around 11 p.m. Saturday in the Old Market neighborhood of Omaha. He was transported to the Nebraska Medical Center where he was pronounced dead. A suspect was taken into custody on Saturday and questioned by authorities. Nationwide, including in Nebraska City, thousands of protesters demonstrated in response to the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor of Louisville, who was unarmed and killed by police. Douglas County attorney said on Monday that Jake Gardner, the owner of the bars The Hive and the Gatsby, acted in self-defense as Sherlock jumped on his back during a scuffle outside the bar. During the scuffle, some of the men were shoved and 2 shots were fired. Gardner told authorities that he fired the 2 shots as warning shots and wanted to get the people to leave the area. Videos show that Sherlock jumped on Gardner and held him in a chokehold for a few seconds. and Gardner wrestled with him before firing the shot that struck and killed Schuckler. Here's another example in just my overview of this article of how systematic racism really is. It is unfortunate that this young man has lost his life, but what's more unfortunate is that every time it seems to be an encounter with an African American and a white person, it's always it's self-defense, fearful of life. Now, a 22-year-old on a grown person's neck, I don't know, or jumping on someone's back. He doesn't look like he was a big muscular guy to begin with. So I don't get it. Why you felt the need to draw your firearm. Now, what's funny to me in all of this is really quickly how people of color are in same situations and claim self-defense, and they never get that defense carried out. It's always still a crime or some time added to that self-defense. There was the woman who was defending herself against her husband and shot in the ceiling and got jail time. But that seems to be an easy scapegoat for them not to press any charges once they encounter some sort of action with a person of color. It's, I was fearful of my life, it's self-defense. The video shows self-defense, but I'm just thinking, like, in this time, it was a 22-year-old kid. You couldn't find anything else to do or some other way to diffuse the situation. I don't know, could just be me, but please leave your thoughts at the bottom of this. Thanks. On to next. Former President Barack Obama published a piece in the Medium on Monday addressing the protests nationwide following the death of George Floyd, and particularly how he thinks people can move forward to sustain momentum to bring about real change. Ultimately, it's going to be up to a new generation of activists to shape, strategize the best fit for the times, he wrote. But I believe there are some basic lessons to draw from past efforts that are worth remembering. His message overall stressed the importance of voting and particularly in politics, particularly at the local level, where decisions on ground level criminal justice and police practices are formed. The nation's first and only African American president began by acknowledging that the waves of protests across the country represent a genuine and legitimate frustration over a decade-long failure to reform police practices and the broader criminal justice system in the United States. He addressed the violence that has broken out at protests in several cities, although the exact root of the violence has been disputed, especially as it differs between locations. What's on this are going to be quick, I promise. The level of the vast difference in leadership from our current president to our former president is so vast. That is the type of message that you need to be sending out to the people, that if you want real change comes from voting. Real change comes from voting at your local levels, making changes at your local levels, participating in the political process at your local levels. And if you don't understand what's going on, that's why you ask people, you ask questions, you read and inform yourself. It's schooling doesn't make you, make you more politically inclined than anybody else. It's just getting involved, reading, doing research, getting to know, what your passions are about your community, about where you live, who you are, your values, and just making sure you see that in every every time you drop your vote, you make sure it represents a value that you hold dear. Yeah, you're not going to like everything. We're not going to like everything the politicians say and do. But if you can find something that you can, hang on to and be proud about and follow through with your vote, then do so. It's important. Right now, it is very much important. Not only our votes at stake, but our lives are at stake as well. So, yeah, I think we need to take voting a lot more seriously. And to add, I know they've been saying about standing down, like not voting this year, to bring pressure to Democrats or Democratic legislators to have a black agenda, but we can't afford to do that. Yeah, we need to make sure they're held accountable, but do you really think that we'll be able to? This president has given the green light to police officers to continue what they've been doing at this point. So do you think we can continue to have that and allow another 4 years for it to get worse? I'm not sure we can withstand that. So that's my thoughts. Again, I'm curious to know what you guys think. So please feel free to add your comments. A Republican group of critics of President Donald Trump released a new video on Sunday slamming his supporters for using the Confederate flag. The men who followed this flag 150 years ago knew what it meant. A voiceover in the spot from the Lincoln Project states, "Treason against their country, death of the United States." Yet the flag keeps turning up at Trump events. The ad also highlights Trump's 2017 comments that were very fine people on both sides of the violent protests in Charlottesville, Virginia, organized by white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and other far-rights. The Lincoln Project will spend $500,000 running the ad in the battleground states of Florida, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and in the nation's capital, CNN reported. A different video by the group set Trump off last month. The spot, entitled "Morning in America," claimed Trump's failure to deal with the coronavirus pandemic had left the nation weaker and sicker and poorer. After it aired, Trump repeatedly attacked the organization's founders, including conservative attorney George Conway, the husband of the counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway. The group has raised $1.4 million in the last 3 days after the ad had aired, the New York Times has reported last week.
The men who followed this flag 150 years ago knew what it meant. Treason against their country, the death of the United States. America defeated the men who followed that flag. Those with honor surrendered and cast it aside forever. So why does it keep showing up today at events supporting Donald Trump? And why does he call the folks who carry it very fine people?
I think there's blame on both sides, but you also had people that were very fine people.
What does it say that they're all in for Trump? What does it say that he won't condemn a flag of hate, division, and losers?
Will not replace us!
For us, it says this is a time for choosing America or Trump.
My thoughts on this article here. No surprise that we are trying to act like the Confederate flag is not a sign of racism, oppression, slavery, so on and so forth. Yeah, some people can look at it as heritage. Well, if that's the way you want to look at it, it should only be in a museum where it belongs. It was a group of citizens who wanted to fight against the United States and actually went to war against the United States to create their own nation. So therein lies the Civil War. That would be treasonous, and under any other circumstances, that would be a treasonous regime, just like Hitler and that group. You don't see Germany walking around flying the swastika high and proud of a time in history that I'm sure many of them are embarrassed by. So I don't even understand why it's still even up for discussion, why it's even allowed to be worn as some kind of proud material. It should only be in the museum. But that's just my thoughts. Once again, thank you for watching CCN Midday News. Hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit that notification button so you will never miss another news update. Have a great day. Peace.